to the story now. Action SA is refuting claims by the Democratic Alliance that it broke rank and decided to follow its own agenda. Just 24 hours after reaching an agreement with coalition partners, Action SA believes the coalition ceases to exist and it says it acted accordingly. Meanwhile, the ACDP in Johannesburg Council believes the coalition agreement still exists regardless of the differences in opinion. I'm joined now by Ronald Winston Harris from the African Christian Democratic Party. Thank you so much, Ronald, for your time this morning. So really the big question here is that does the coalition agreement actually exist or does it no longer exist? And more than anything else, I think those who are residences in the city of Johannesburg are wondering, will we get our services delivered? Does it stop operations from happening? And really, with all the political conundrum, how do we bring about stability within the municipality?
Good morning, Faith, and good morning to the viewers. I think this brings to mind the quality of the coalition that has been put on the table. Because from an ACDP perspective, the coalition still exists. The coalition oversight group has not given any undertaking or in writing that the coalition has ceased to exist. There was a joint caucus meeting held earlier in the week, and at that meeting, the marching orders were given to the different parties. But a day later, the Action SA then decided that they're going to pull out, and they sent via WhatsApp their list of candidates that they were putting forward. Now, that doesn't speak to honesty, it doesn't speak to integrity. It's just a merely, as I said to Mr. Baloy, it's a green version of the blue T-shirt. So it's not a good sign at all.
The green version of the blue T-shirts, are you also saying that the Democratic Alliance, like Action SA, is acting from the premise of arrogance and opportunism?
I won't call it arrogance and opportunism. I think it's more power-mongering than anything else. It's about getting the best possible seat, getting the inner track for working up towards 2024. But they're not giving the citizens of Johannesburg a fair shake of the can. Because coalitions are really about good democracy. And it gives all the parties, smaller parties included, an opportunity to participate and to deliver as per our manifestos. But when it comes to coalitions like this, where national imperatives and regional imperatives are two different sides of the coin, and at the end of the day, it's about people and their egos that is running the coalition and not the coalition partners themselves. So the city of Johannesburg, the residents are going to be shortchanged in this process.
I hear you, Ronald. Does that mean that with the African National Congress now in a position of, in inverted commas, power, given the fact that now the executive mayor of the municipality is indeed an African National Congress member, do you think that the city of Johannesburg is safe under those hands? Do you think that it will not only be safe, but it will actually be effective in these hands?
You know, Faith, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of pointing fingers at what the ANC does and what they don't do. I think we need to be focusing on the fact that they are in charge now. And as opposition parties, we have to hold them accountable. We must trust that the mechanisms that are in place to hold parties accountable are going to be working. If it doesn't work, then I think the citizens have every right to say, listen, we are going to be punishing you comes the next election. But right now we have a responsibility to the citizens. We have a responsibility to administer the city together with the ANC. Ourselves from the opposition benches, we need to be having those oversight mechanisms working and working well so that the citizens will be the winners at the end of the day. We certainly would want to go back into power, but from an ACDP perspective, I think power politics is the last thing that we want to be playing with. We want to be looking at integrity and honesty, and we want to be looking at godly governance. If the ANC is going to do that, then fine, they're going to be having our support. But if I found that in the coalition as it existed before, that certainly was there. We were given only 10 months to do something, and unfortunately, power politics reared its ugly head.
Yeah. You know, it brings into question once again, Ronald, around the maturity of our democracy to be able to work as coalition partners. Because as Tshwane, for example, is a typical example of such, how many times do we have either a hung council or it had to be suspended or province had to come in and step in in order to bring some form of stability, right? We're bringing this right now to the Johannesburg municipality as well. And it really questions, and it really does question the way in which political parties are mature enough to actually work together in a coalition government. And I wonder what coalition looks like in the South African context, because it looks as though coalition works when egos are removed. I worry, though, that egos here are not removed. And as a result of this, I don't know if we've got the political, or we are actually exercising the political maturity to ensure that coalition governments actually work.
You know, we mustn't be too hard on ourselves. If you look at coalitions in Europe, in India, New Zealand, those societies have been going for hundreds of years. We are about 28 years old, and coalitions are a very, very new thing. So we shouldn't be too harsh on ourselves. I think if you look at any forming of groups, you go through the norming, the forming, and then the storming stage. We went from a very flimsy norming and forming right into storming. And I think the template must be readjusted now. Policies, coalitions certainly can work, but it takes a lot of thinking about removing of the egos, as you said. Let's take the power plays out of it. One of the challenges that we're having as well is that we're using incidents that are taking place in KwaZulu-Natal and Nelson Mandela Bay and Cape Town, and we're imposing it and parachuting it into Johannesburg. That can't work. For a coalition to work, I think we need to be looking in the city of Johannesburg, how is it that the parties there are working together, but then removing from it the oversight that the national officers are playing, and it's in the national officers, unfortunately, that we have these egos and power plays coming to the fore. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think over time, we will unlearn those negative traits, and we will look at forming coalitions that can work and that can work for the citizen of Johannesburg and not for the citizen of KZN in our case.
A very last question. I have to let you go very soon, Ronald. What happens to service delivery in the Johannesburg municipality? That's the biggest concern of the residents here. Am I going to suffer because of the politics at play?
I'm not a good fortune teller, but what I can say is that we are there on the seats, on the opposition benches, and we certainly will be looking at every opportunity, including the Section 79 committees, to ensure that services will be rendered. Now, it's speculation, and I don't have any proof of corruption and brown paper bags and all of those stuff. I go on the premise, and the ACDP goes on the premise, that the people that are in the seats are there with a very strong goodwill towards the citizens, and we're going to ensure that services will be delivered. Unfortunately, we're riding on the back of very, very poor rollout of services in the past, but this can be fixed, I imagine, with the right will.
We'll leave it there. Ronald Winston Harris from the African Christian Democratic Party just talking about exactly how this coalition agreement has come to play. They're saying that they've honoured the agreement in a principled manner and voted with the Joint Coalition Caucus.